So me and Teddy brought this car in, started taking it apart to install another Whipple supercharger onto it, and as soon as we started taking it apart we made a discovery, and we thought that this was a really good opportunity for us to put out a public service announcement. So Teddy, what have we found first?
We found, first of all, oil.
Oil,
on
yeah.
the oil filter flap, so that's not a good sign, because right above it is the oil filter. So when you remove this, you can see that there's oil on the end of the oil filter.
And the reason for that is because this car has already had an oil
cooler modification.
An oil cooler modification to fix, which we talk about a lot on this channel, obviously. But this particular one uses a kit that isn't the kit that we supply, and it uses an oil filter pedestal sandwich plate for its oil feeds to the cooler, and actually blanks off the factory line feed completely. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but sandwich plates on oil filters, they were bad news in the Jap scene. They're bad news, they've always been bad news, and in this particular instance it's really bad news. So straight away we've got an oil leak. Sandwich plates are renowned for causing oil leaks.
And the other fault with oil filter pedestal is on most cars you're alright because you've got room above your oil filter. The right-hand drive Mustangs didn't relocate their oil filters, they're hard enough to get off anyway with the power steering control unit on this side.
Now it's an inch out.
An inch or 2 inch further out, so you're like this far off.
You need to come around here, Fox Films. This is the point, is you can't get in. Yeah, you see the gap, or non-gap, yeah? Yeah. We'll get a better shot of that from up top.
So as you can see, there's literally no gap in this oil filter. To remove it, it's going to be really hard to remove. Probably have to take the anti-roll bar off to make it even remotely easy to remove, but that's not an option.
Well, no, I mean, what they do is that you've got to take this engine mount off, jack the engine up to create a bit of space.
Is that what you actually have to do?
Yeah.
I don't know, why the f***?
But you can't do that with a supercharger on.
Well, it's got a service due. This is probably why. Everyone's looked at it and gone, f*** that.
You're getting all this. So, yeah, I mean, there's no way to take the oil filter off now. I've been told that the best way to do a service on a car that's got one of these style oil cooler kits on is to actually take this engine mount bolt off, jack the engine up to try and give yourself a little bit of space. The problem with that is, especially on this car, once we bought the supercharger on, there's not going to be any room up there to jack the engine up. So, you know, we're just...
You have to lower the engine anyway on the new superchargers.
That's a fair point, yeah. So
it needs to come off.
So let's go up top. I'll have a look at it from top so you can see we've taken radiator out and stuff so that we can get a better look.
Yeah.
So we brought it halfway down for you. I want you to start going over a couple of these things. I've been building cars a long time. Steel braided line, they look pretty, sounds really good in principle, but the problem with a steel braided line is wherever it's touching, it'll rub. And rather than the line rubbing through, it generally rubs through whatever it's touching. So here you can see it's been cable tied, bodged. Here you can see it's been cable tied through this hole here, and it's rubbing on the inside of the chassis leg bracket, rubbing the bracket off, which is now allowing it to start rusting, and you can see the rust actually running down the line. So we'll cut this off. Teddy, do you want to show them what's happening in there? Abbo, come and get close up.
So as you can see, it's rusting.
But
from here, because it's rubbing through here.
It's not rubbing through that, it's rubbing through
that.
this.
Yeah, so you've got rust everywhere. And the other downside to these lines is if you ever want to move them, you can see this. I'll get a close up of that, but I don't know if you'll be able to see it.
Yeah.
That, start fraying. That's only one, but they get really bad, and if you touch it and you stab your fingers, it's not good.
They're good in principle, but I always prefer to use a nylon braided line because there's no risk of it damaging anything that it's touching. Pretty shoddily fit anyway, isn't it, just in general, so it's touching in all sorts of places. It's got some pretty bad cable ties on it.
I'll show you through there why it's so bad.
That's not the kit's fault. Let's bring it down rest it way. So from this angle you can get a much better shot of what's going on down here, how close the oil filter is. Abbo, sorry mate. So obviously we've taken the radiator out of part of this install, but you can see here there's absolutely no room whatsoever to get that oil filter out. That makes service time incredibly difficult. And by the time you've had that filter on and off a couple of times as well, you start to weaken the seal on the sandwich plate. And so this, listen, guys, a bodge to fix a common fault is still a bodge. So, you know, like make sure if you're going to be, you know, it's good practice obviously to get your oil cooler, factory oil cooler replaced with a kit that works like this one in principle, but wherever you go to get that done, make sure that you're using nylon braided lines, so there's no risk of it damaging your body or your chassis. It's not just that, is it? We noticed it's been rubbing on the roll bar.
Yeah.
It's been rubbing on the inside of the pipe, that big pipe. It's making a bit of a mess. And for the love of God, please do not use a sandwich plate to take your oil feed from. There's an oil feed on side of the engine. Use a takeoff plate that's been designed to work, because that is the clutch of this kit.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what else to say, guys, but that's it. Public service announcement. Wherever you're going to get your oil cooler fitted, make sure that you're asking these questions, and make sure you're getting the right kit fitted when you do.